Hey guys, it's Vox. Welcome to another Master Duel video, and today I'm going to be showing to you guys the newly supported branded Despia. With the support that branded Despia received today with a recent pack, the deck actually became tier 1 to tier 1.5 with the current meta on Master Duel, so that is quite incredible. Before we go into the deck profile, make sure to like and subscribe and let me know in the comments down below about what you think about branded fusion, and it's going to be splashed into every single deck possible. We will start with the hand traps first, as always, with 2 copies of Maxi, triple Ash Blossom, and then with the 1 crossout designator and the 2 Gold by the Grave. We basically reduced the copy of Maxi to 2 because most of the times it will never resolve, or you get the idea, you can't even use it to go for your fusions. Not because the same case for Ash, you can't use that as well, but at least Ash now is more powerful because everybody's going to be splashing branded fusion into their decks. Before I go and explain to you about the monsters for the deck, the reason that I play 50 cards into my main deck, this is the final iteration. I have been testing this deck with 40 cards, with 42, with 45, with or without allures, with less copies of Egypt Chain, with less copies of the Frightful package basically, with, for example, 1 branded red, 3 branded in red, without the Gold Sarcophagus or the Fool's Burial, and this version that you're seeing currently right now in front of your eyes, the 50 version deck, in my opinion, is the most consistent. It almost never breaks, and it will almost always have something to play for you to go into your place, something to actually activate into your hand, or in this situation, because you will see you have so many starters, and also you have Ecclesia. There are so many ways in which you can bait negates and then make sure that your branded fusion gets resolved. Let's go and start with the monster lineup for the branded Despia, for the Despia first actually. We're playing triple copies of Despian Tragedy. What it does, if this card is sent to the graveyard or banished by a card effect, you can add 1 Despia monster from your deck to your hand except itself, and then you can also banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 branded spell trap in your graveyard, set it to your field. Basically, the effect that it says, if this card is sent to the graveyard or banished by a card effect, these card effects include everything except the Fallen of Albus effect and then the Super Poly plus the Lubellion. Because if you read these cards that I just explained, the Lubellion, the Super Poly, and the Fallen of Albus, they have to discard as cost. It is not part of the card effect. So if you choose to discard by activating Fallen of Albus, if you choose to discard your Despian Tragedy will not resolve. But your Egypt Chain will, because it doesn't have any restrictions about how it goes into the graveyard. It doesn't care as long as it is being sent, from hand or field to the graveyard, it will actually activate. But keep this in mind, Despian Tragedy needs to be sent or being banished by a card effect. Then for the other Despia monsters we have into the deck, we're playing triple copies of Aluber, the Jester of Despia. If this card is normal special summoned, you can add 1 branded spell trap from your deck to your hand. If a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, while this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls, special summon this card, and if you do, you negate the targeted monster's effect until the end of this turn. Aluber is basically your best normal summon for the deck. It will search your branded fusion, it will search you anything else that you might need to go into your plays, and most of the times, if you have your branded fusion into the hand, this is one of the best targets for you to bait that Ash. Then for the other branded Despia monsters that we have into the lineup as well, might as well just go with the Fallen of Albus, triple copies of Fallen of Albus. If this card is normal special summoned except during the damage step, you can discard 1 card as cost, as I've said, fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters on either field as fusion material, including this card, but you cannot use monsters you control as fusion material. Basically, Fallen of Albus is a Super Poly on legs, but you have to use him and 1 other of your opponent's monsters that they have. One of the ways in which you can break your opponent's Empen, for example, if you special summon Fallen of Albus in defense position, and then you can basically get the Empen off of the field and things like that. Quite an incredible card. Then for the other cards for the branded Despia archetype, we're also playing 1 Incredible Ecclesia the Virtues for light target for Albion the branded Dragon, but it's also an incredible card because you can bait hand traps or negates when you're going second. Her effect is, if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon her this way once per turn, and then you can only use each of the following effects of a critical ecclesia once per turn. During the main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card, special summon one Sword Soul monster or Fallen of Albus from your hand or deck, and during the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard this turn, you can add this card from your graveyard to your hand. Not only she will be recurred into your hand if you sent a fusion monster in the turn that Ecclesia went to the graveyard as well, and then you can use her as a fusion fodder basically. She is also one of the ways in which you can get your Fallen of Albus special summon to the field to either bait the negate or quite literally break one monster off of your opponent's board. Then for the other one-off, we're playing one Tri-Brigade Mercurier. What it does, when your opponent activates a monster effect while you control a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albus as material, quick effect, you can send this card from your hands or face-up field to the graveyard, you negate that effect. Basically, as long as you have any fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albus as material, you have an Omni negate on your hand. If this card is banished, you can add from your deck to your hand one Fallen of Albus or one monster that mention it except itself. Basically, with Tri-Brigade Mercurier, you could search your Incredible Ecclesia, you could search your Springer's Kit, you could search your Albion, the Shrouded Dragon. And basically, Tri-Brigade Mercurier with both Springer's Kit and the Albion, the Shrouded Dragon, they are basically called the Lost package because we're also playing one copy of Branded Lost. Then for the other one-off copies that we play one Springer's Kit. If you have a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albus as material on your field or in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add to your hand one of your branded spell traps that is banished or your graveyard, or your deck or graveyard, sorry. Then place one card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. Basically, if you have a fusion monster in the field, you can special summon her from your hand, and when you do that, you will add one branded spell or trap from your that is banished or deck or graveyard into your hand, and then you will place one card from your hand back into the deck. One of the ways in which you can search your branded spells, quite incredible. And for the other one-offs, we're playing, as I've said, one Albion, the Shrouded Dragon, the last monster for the Lost package. What he does, this card's name becomes Fallen of Albus while in the field or in the graveyard. If this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can send one Fallen of Albus or branded spell trap from your hand or deck to the graveyard and apply the following effect based on where you send it from. So basically, if you choose to discard Fallen of Albus from the hand, you can special summon this card, or if you choose to discard a Fallen of Albus or a card that mentions him, basically a spell or trap, you can place this card on the bottom of the deck. Then if you place this card from your hand, draw one card. Basically an upstart goblin, and sometimes it can actually come up in which you will want to discard the Fallen of Albus to special summon this card from the hand, use it as a body, or even because it's 2.5k beat stick, it can actually help you sometimes to OTK your opponent, but most of the times you will use a second effect to draw one card and get him back into the deck. Then for the other one-offs, we're playing one Ad Libitum of Despia, quite an incredible card, one of the best extenders for the deck if you know how to use it. During your main phase, you can make all monsters currently in the field can attack equal to their own level until the end of the opponent's turn. If this card in your hand or field is used as fusion material and sent to the graveyard or banished, you can target one of your Despia monsters or level 8 or higher fusion monsters that is banished or in your graveyard, except Ad Libitum of Despia, of course, and you can special summon it. You can have so many combos with Ad Libitum in which you can recur your Mirror Jade in order for you to use the effect of targeting a monster and banish it twice on one turn, which is quite incredible. And then we're also playing one copy of Dramaturge of Despia. If a fusion, synchro, exceeds or link monster is special summoned, you can target one effect monster to the field, negate its effect until the end of this turn, and if this card in your hand or field is used as fusion material and sent to the graveyard or banished, you can special summon this card. A pretty solid 3k bit stick that you can have into the field. You can also add the negate. Most of the times he's basically a fusion fodder that also recurs himself every single time that you use him as a fusion material. Quite a decent card. Then for the other one-offs, now that we are done with the branded Despia monster line, we're playing one Fairy Tale Snow. What she does, if this card is normal special summoned, target one face-up monster your opponent controls, change it to face-down defense position. If this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you can banish 7 other cards from your hand, field, and or graveyard, and you can special summon Fairy Tale Snow. Something that you need to keep this in mind with this card is that it is not once per turn. Basically, if you chain Fairy Tale Snow on chain link 1, your opponent responds with the target on banish from graveyard, like like literally DD Crow or Called by the Grave, you can quite literally Chainlink 3, use her effect again to banish another 7, so you can basically dodge that either negate and banish or just straight up banish from the graveyard to basically special summon her into the field. And the cards that you want to banish with Fairy Tale Snow most of the times would be, if you did not resolve them already, Despia Tragedy for the extra search, and you basically get the idea. And the other useless spells that you have into the graveyard, like Frightful Patchwork or Allure of Darkness, that you cannot recur them or you cannot use them while they're in the graveyard, basically. Then, last but not least for the monster lineup, we're playing the Frightful package, which is basically 3 copies of Edgem Chain with the 3 copies of Frightful Patchwork and the 2 copies of Polymerization. What Edgem Chain does is, when this card declares an attack, you can add 1 Edgem Chain from your deck to your hand. If this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can add 1 Frightful card from your deck to your hand. Basically, if you, as I've said, if you discard this card, use it as a fusion material, etc., and it goes to the graveyard, it will search you your Frightful Patchwork, and then your Frightful Patchwork, what it does, add 1 Egypt monster and Polymerization from your deck to your hand. Basically, your 1 Egypt Chain can search you your Patchwork, and then you activate your Frightful Patchwork to search you 1 copy of your Polymerization and another copy of Egypt Chain to use it as you see fit. And then, now that we are actually done with our monster lineup, we're gonna go straight into the spells. 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, as always. There are a lot of back row decks or even combo decks that just brick. They're going to set their Infinite Permanence, their Called by the Grave, etc. And then your Harpy's Feather Duster, if you drew it, it will quite literally save your day. As I've said, 2 copies of Polymerization. Then for the cards for consistency, to increase our consistency for the deck, 1 Foolish Burial and then 1 Gold Sarcophagus. Basically, your targets of Foolish Burial would be either Despia Tragedy, either your Fairy Tale Snow, you get the idea. And then for your Gold Sarcophagus, same case, either your Despia Tragedy or also, in this case, your Tri-Brigade Mercury as well, because in case you forgot, if this card is banished, you can add 1 Fallen of Albaz or Springer Skid or Albion the Shrouded Dragon or even the Incredible Ecclesia, which is quite nice. And now, another card that we play to increase our consistency and our draw power, 3 copies of Allure of Darkness, draw 2 cards, then banish 1 dark monster from your hand, or if you do not have any in your hand, send your Return Heart to the graveyard. Basically, you will always want to use this when you have a dark in your hand, ideally either your Despia Tragedy or, you know, Tri-Brigade Mercurier, ideally as I've said, but always if you have any darks, you would want to activate this, banish that dark that you have into your hand to draw 2. Never risk it, because most of the times you can be unlucky and quite literally lose your entire hand, but this helps with your consistency quite a lot. Then 3 copies of Branded Fusion. This card is absolutely phenomenal. This is the key piece that it was missing for the Branded Despia archetype, and with this deck can actually go into the next level, quite literally. What it does, fusion summon 1 fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material from your extra deck, using 2 monsters from your hand, deck, or field as fusion material. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters the turn you activate this card. Quite literally, Fusion Destiny, but for the branded branded archetype. Obviously, as I've said, triple copies. Then we run 1 copy of Despia Theater the Branded. During your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material. If a face-up non-fusion fairy monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect or is destroyed by battle, you can target 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster in your graveyard and you can special summon it. Quite an incredible card, quite literally a field spell that is a Polymerization, quite useful, and also the recursion that it adds will help you in your grind game most of the times. Then we're playing 1 copy of Branded Lost. What it does, the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned this way. If you fusion summon a fusion monster, you can add 1 Fallen of Albaz or a monster that mention it from your deck to your hand. As I've said, the Lost package, in which if you fusion summon, you can either add a Fallen of Albaz to your hand, or you could add an Incredible Ecclesia, Springer Skid, a Tri-Brigade Mercurier for the negate, or an Albion the Shrouded Dragon for the Upset Goblin effect to draw 1, or even special summon him for the extra body on the field. Then we're playing 2 copies of Super Polymerization, quite an incredible card, a phenomenal card that will help you break your opponent's board. Discard 1 card as cost, fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from either field as fusion material. Neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. If you're smart with using this, you can basically break chains, basically forcing your opponent to use their effects, and then if you're not too hesitant, use your Super Poly at the right time, break their board, and you're also got their negates or their effects. Then we're, as I've said, 2 Called by the Grave with 1 Crossroad Designator, and then 3 copies of Branded Opening. It's a quick play spell. What it does, discard 1 card, then take 1 Despia monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it in the fetch position. And you're also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters. That doesn't matter for us because we do not play Predaplant Vert Anaconda to the deck. If a fusion monster you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. That is not a protection for just 1 monster, that is quite literally for your entire board, which is quite incredible. And keep this in mind, most of the times, even you sometimes, will forget that you have this protection with Branded Opening into your graveyard, so always remember that. And last but not least, 2 copies of Branded in Red, another quick play of ours, another quick play spell that we have of ours. Target 1 Despia monster or Fallen Valbas in your graveyard, add it to your hand, then you can apply the following effect. Fusion summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials mentioned in it from your hand or field, but it cannot attack directly this turn. Basically, the same case with Branded in Opening, same case for Branded in Red. Most of the times you would want to play with your toggle on and use these effects most of the times on the draw phase. And why in the draw phase, you may ask? Because your opponent will not be able to use their effect veilers, etc. Because effect veiler, for example, can only be used on the main phase. And when you use that on the draw phase, you're basically safe. Most of the times, I also need to keep this, and I also need to mention to you guys, is Branded Red is an incredible way in which you can get your Guardian Chimera out and basically break 2 cards off of their board. There are also situations in which you will use your Branded Red to banish, use for example 1 Ad Libitum and the 1 Mirror Jade that you have on the field that you already used its effect to banish, and then basically get a Masquerade, for example, into the field, and with the effect of Ad Libitum, you will be able to recur your Mirror Jade again back into the field, and you will also have the target to banish effect again being able to be used, which is quite incredible. And the reason that happens is because when it leaves the field and then comes back again, it basically resets its effects, but the only thing that won't happen is the end phase effect, in which it says, if this card leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase. Basically, that last effect will not activate if you get your Mirror Jade Branded in Red, use it, and then recur it back with your Ad Libitum. Just keep this in mind. This is what you lose, basically, in order for you to gain the banish effect again. Now that we are done with the main deck, I also want to show you guys some other options that you could potentially add into your deck before we go into the extra deck. One potential option that you could actually add to the deck, which is not as bad, is 1 Despian Comedy. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a face-up Despia card you control, you can discard this card, negate that effect. If this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you can tribute a fusion monster, special summon this card. Basically, the tribute effect is in order for you to avoid targeted negation. Let's say you want to activate an effect of a fusion monster that you have into the field, like Despian Corrates, for example. Your opponent chains Infinity Permanence, Effect Veiler, etc., etc. A targeted negation. What you can do in response is, if your Despian Command is already on the graveyard, you can use its quick effect, tribute your Despian Corrates for chain 2 or chain 3, for example, and then when the chain resolves, you will have Despian Command in the field. The targeted negation will lose its target because Despian Corrates is on the graveyard now, and then you will also resolve his effect to get his entire board into 0, and basically you can OTK them from there. Another thing that you could potentially add into your deck as well is Dark Ruler No More, 3 copies that is. This card is incredible, and honestly I'm really close into crafting this myself. I'm still keeping this just in case, but let's be real. with the current meta for Master Duel in the last 2 months, it is so fucking toxic if you're playing second. If you do not draw any hand traps or any board breakers, you're basically fucked. You're basically sitting there watching your opponent playing by themselves for 5 to 10 minutes, doing their entire combo, and when your turn comes by, you have nothing else to break them. Dark Lure No More is an incredible card for you to break your opponent's board, like Fluangeries for the Weird Barrier, for example, or the Adventure combo decks, but there are so many out there. Dark Lure No More is basically the answer for you to actually play when you lose the coin toss, which is me, for example, most of the times. Let's be real. And what it does, in case you do not know, negate the effect of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, your opponent takes no damage. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. So keep this in mind. You will not be able to OTK them the turn you use Dark Lure No More, but what you will be able to do is break their entire board. Now, another option that you could also add into your deck is one copy of Branded Sword. This card is actually pretty good. What it does: banish any number of branded spell traps from your graveyard, special summon that many Iceblade tokens. They are Dragon, Dark, level 8 with 2.5k attack and defense, and then you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one of your banished monsters that is full of Albaz or mention it, add that monster into your hand. Not only it has a recursion when it's on the graveyard, and you can also use its effect to get the tokens on the field to either OTK your opponent, quite literally, they are 2.5k bit sticks, or use them for fusion fodder to go into your fusion lines. And now, last but not least, we can also add into the deck 2 copies of Masked Saints 2, because you can also run Masked Hero Darklaw. Why would you want to run Masked Hero Darklaw into the deck? Because if you have Masked Hero Darklaw into the field, your opponent will not be able to use Forbidden Droplet into your field to break it. Because if you read Masked Hero Darklaw, what he does is, must be special summoned by Masked Chains, any card sent to your opponent's graveyard is banished instead. Once per turn, if your opponent adds a card from the deck to their hand, you can banish one random card from your opponent's hand. Basically, what Droplet does is, in order for it to actually activate, its cost requirement is it needs to send any number of other cards from your hand or field to the graveyard. And because you have Darklaw into the field, any card that is sent to the graveyard is banished instead, meaning they cannot activate Forbidden Droplet. And the targets that you have for Masked Chains 2 would be any of your Dark level 4s or your Despian Tragedies, etc. that you could use on and go into your Darklaw, for example. And it is actually a really good addition into your deck. I just don't have any space currently for me to actually add him. I playtested with him a bit. He came up quite a lot. It is actually really powerful, but most of the times it is not as necessary. And the other extra deck monsters you could potentially add, might as well finish them off before I go into the extra deck, is 1 copy of Brigand the Glory Dragon, sorry. He requires 1 Fallen of Albaz and 1 level 8 or higher monster. What he does, cannot be destroyed by battle. While you control this fusion summoned card, your opponent cannot target other monsters you control with monster effects. During the end phase now, if this card is in your graveyard because it was centered this turn, which it will be most of the time, you can add to your hand or special summon 1 Tri-Brigade monster or 1 Fallen of Albaz from your deck. Basically, with the effects of Mirror Jade, in which you can banish 1 card from the field, and when you do that, you send a card from your extra deck to the graveyard. This is one of the targets in which you can send to actually search a Fallen or to search or special summon a Fallen of Albaz into the end phase, and then you can use that Fallen of Albaz into the end phase to basically get 1 monster off of your opponent's board to make one of your big boss monsters that you have into the extra deck, which is quite powerful, let's be real. Then the other target that you can also add, which is a really good super poly target, is 1 Despian Proscenion. It requires 1 Despia monster and then 1 light and 1 dark. What it does, during the main phase, quick effect, you can target and fusion Synchro Exist or Link monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, or special summon it into the field. Situation in which you can get your opponent's DPE, it's so fucking powerful. When this card destroys an opponent's monster with a battle, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack or defense, whichever is higher. Basically, the reason I did not play this card into my deck currently is because I do not have any space. I would rather play with Mad Dragon of the Swamp because he has more applications against the adventure combo decks or any other deck that plays the standard either IP, Borlot Savage, or the Appaloosa and then the Baron, because they're both wins but different types. with Mad Dragon, you can actually break these two with Super Poly, but with Despia Proscenion, it is very specific. Don't get me wrong, if you're playing against branded Despia decks all the time, you will want to add Despia Proscenion to your deck because he has so many targets that he can actually apply and get them with Super Poly. But for me currently, I just don't see the use. Even though you can see I have him now currently, I literally, quite literally, before I started the deck profile, I just swapped the Brigand back out and got the Proscenion in. But that's what I'm doing every single time. I will be swapping my extra deck, swapping a few cards in and out depending on what I face on the ladder. And then the last choice for the extra deck that you can potentially add is one Predablam. I can't even read this, I'm not even going to try to attempt it. What it does, it requires 3 dark monsters on the field, gains attack equal to the total original attack of all other monsters on the field with a Predator counter. You can only use its effect once per turn, and then when your opponent special summon a monster or monsters from their extra deck while you control this fusion summon card, quick effect, you can negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. Quite literally, a Solemn Judgment on legs, which is quite incredible. And the second effect is, if your opponent controls a monster with a Predator counter, you can special summon this card from your graveyard in defense position. In the ways you can get your Predator counter of your opponent is with your Predablam Dagostapelia, in case you're not aware. Now that we are done with explaining the cards that you could potentially add to the deck and changing some that we have currently in the deck that I'm showing to you guys for the deck profile, let's go straight into the extra deck. We're playing one copy of Mad Dragon of the Swamp. He requires 2 monsters with the same attribute by different types. Your opponent cannot target this card or monsters on the field with the same attribute as this card with card effects. Once per turn, declare one attribute. This card becomes that attribute until the end of this turn. Basically, Mad Dragon of the Swamp is an incredible Super Poly target, but it can also protect you from targeted effects because, as I just read to you guys, you can change your attribute, and basically, if your field is entire dark, you can make Mad Dragon of the Swamp go to dark, and then your opponent cannot target your dark monsters that are on the field with card effects. Quite incredible. Then the other Super Poly is one Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. It requires 2 dark monsters on the field except tokens. If this card is fusion summoned, you can make this card gain attack equal to one of your opponent's special summoned monsters until the end of this turn. Once per turn, you can target a level 5 or higher monster your opponent controls until the end phase. This card name becomes that monster's original name and replace these effects with that monster's original effect. If this fusion summoned card is destroyed, you can destroy all your opponent's special summoned monsters. An incredible card, quite powerful. I can't even believe that it's actually super rare. You don't have any excuse of not having it in your extra deck. Quite literally one of the most, or if not the best, Super Poly targets for Master Duel currently. Then the last Super Poly target that we have is one Predablam Dagostapelia. It requires 1 fusion monster and 1 dark monster. By the way, you can also make this yourself because it's the target negation. It is quite powerful. Once per turn, quick effect. You can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, place one predator counter on it, and if it's a level 2 or higher, it becomes level 1 as long as it has a Predator counter. Basically, with this card, you can quite literally ruin synchro decks because you change their levels, and because you do that, they will not be able to go into their synchro place. And because you can go to synchro place, most of the times they will just straight up lose. And also, negate the activated effects of your opponent's monster that have a Predator counter. So quite literally, when your opponent activates an effect, you can change the Dagostapelia, you add to them a Predator counter, you reduce their level to 1, and you also negate their activated effects. Quite incredible. Now for the other fusion monster that we have into the deck is one Titanic Lad, the Ash Dragon. He requires 1 Fallen of Albus and 1 monster with 2.5k attack or more. Basically one of the Fallen of Albus targets for you to go normally using his effect. Gains attack equal to the combined original level of the monster used for the fusion summon. After this card is fusion summoned for the rest of this turn, it is unaffected by the activated effects of any other monster special summoned from the extra deck. During the end phase, if this card is in your graveyard because it was centered this turn, you can add to your hand or special summon 1 Dogmatica monster or 1 Fallen of Albus from your deck. Basically, him and the Brigand that we have here is one of the ways in which you can special summon your Fallen of Albus with the effect of Mirror Jade, in which you will just send them from the extra deck straight to the graveyard, and then at the end phase, you will be able to use their effects to special summon the Fallen of Albus to get something else off your opponent's board and just destroy that monster, get it off the board. Then we're playing 2 copies of Albion the Branded. 3 copies is unnecessary and 1 copy is not enough. 2 copies are perfect, in my opinion at least. He requires 1 Fallen of Albas and 1 Light monster. If this card is fusion summoned, you can fusion summon a level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, except himself, by banishing fusion materials mentioned on it from your hand, field, and/or graveyard. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was entered this turn, you can add to your hand or set 1 branded spell trap directly from your deck. Basically, that's why we have the 2 light targets with the Incredible Eclipse of the Virtues and the Fertile Snow, in which you can quite literally, if you have your Mirror Jade combo on the board, you can use one of your branded fusions to go into your Albion and then use his Miracle Fusion effect, which is basically to fusion someone off of the graveyard, banish those materials to go into something else that you have into your extra deck. And also, when he goes to the graveyard, you can set or get into your hand one of your branded spells or traps, and basically you can go from there into your combos, or even better, use them into your opponent's turn with cards like Branded Red, for example, as just explained in the deck profile. Then we're playing 1 copy of Despian Queritis. He requires 1 Despian monster and 1 light or dark monster. During the main phase, quick effect, you can change the attack of all monsters currently on the field to 0 until the end of this turn, except level 8 or higher fusion monsters. If this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can add to your hand or special summon 1 Fallen of Albas or Despia monster from your deck. Basically, when he gets destroyed by a card effect, which in most cases your opponent will not read, you will be able to special summon either a Fallen of Albas, to use his effect again to super poly one of their monsters, or go into your Aluber to search for one of your spells, Branded Fusion, etc. for your follow-up. Then we're playing 1 copy of Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. A lot of people will ask why you're not playing 2 or 3 copies of this. I quite literally don't have any space into my extra deck. I could remove Proscenion, but it's actually a target for Super Poly that can come up. Same case for the Brigand or the Predaplant, Triff, whatever the fuck. But 1 copy is actually more than enough with the games that I have played currently with this deck. 2 copies can come up, but most of the times you would rather go into something else, to be honest. What it does, first of all, it requires 1 Despia monster and 1 light or dark monster. While you control this fusion summon card, your opponent must pay 600 life points to activate cards or effects. If your opponent controls a Ritual Fusion, Synchro Exceed, or Link monster while this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. Quite an incredible card. Again, if you want to play this card, if you want to have 2 copies of this into your extra deck, you could remove 1 Proscenion, you could remove 1 Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, but if you do that, I think you will notice that you will lose good targets for your Super Poly, good potential targets that could actually win you games. But then, if you had the 2nd copy of Masquerade, there are other situations in which you have an insane hand, your opponent doesn't have any interruption, and then you can quite literally go all in, end on double Masquerade and then a Mirror Jade, and then your opponent is quite literally fucked. You can't do anything. Then, now that you're done with the Masquerade, we're running 2 copies of Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon, the new released post monster for the deck. Quite a phenomenal card. What it does, it requires Fallen of Albas and 1 Fusion, Synchro Exceed, or Link monster. You can only control 1 Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon, you can only control 1. That's basically it. You can go to the 2nd one because he is that powerful. Once per turn, quick effect, you can send 1 Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that mentions Fallen of Albas as material, banish 1 monster on the field. Also, this card cannot use this effect next turn. I just explained a few minutes ago not in which way, how you can actually bypass this restriction with using it with Ad Libitum, with Branded Red, go into any of your other monsters that you have into the extra deck, and then with the effect of Ad Libitum, get him back into the field, and then you can actually use this effect to banish once again. But if you do that, you will lose its end phase effect, which is, if this fusion summoned card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase of this turn. Basically, you either wipe your field or you can have a 2nd banish effect if you do the combo that I just explained with Branded Red and Ad Libitum. Then we're also playing 2 copies of Lubellion the Searing Dragon, another newly added card for the extra deck for Branded Despia, which is quite incredible. He allows us to go into full combo. What he does, he requires 1 Dark Monster, 1 Fallen of Albas. If this card is fusion summoned, you can discard 1 card, Fusion summon a level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, except himself, by shuffling fusion materials mentioned on it from the deck, from monsters on the field, graveyard, and or face-up banished cards. For the rest of this turn, this card cannot attack. Also, you cannot special summon a monster from the extra deck except fusion monsters. Basically, he's the target for you to go when you use your branded fusion 99% of the times, and then you will use his effect and basically go from there, and I will show you in the combo tutorial, so if you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, don't worry about that. Then we're playing 2 copies of Guardian Chimera. It requires 3 monsters with different names. What it does must be first fusion summon, using only fusion materials from your hand and field with at least 1 monster from each. If this card is fusion summoned by a spell card or effect, you can draw cards equal to the number of cards used as material from the hand, and if you do, destroy cards your opponent controls equal to the number of cards used as material from the field. So if you use 2 cards from the hand and 1 from the field, you will draw 2, destroy 1. If you use 2 cards from the field and 1 from your hand, you will draw 1 and destroy 2. Then you can only use this effect once per turn, and while polymerization is in your graveyard, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. Something that you need to keep in mind with Guardian Chimera is you will always want to resolve her first if you have 2 chains that you can resolve. That means that you want to go Guardian Chimera, chain 1, and whatever else you might have for chain 2, because they can actually ash your Guardian Chimera. And if they do that, you will lose its distraction effect and the draw as well, which you do not want to do that. Obviously, you want to protect this as much as possible from resolving. And the Despia Proscenium, which I read to you guys previously, this is basically for the extra deck and for the main deck as well. Now that we are done with the deck profile, let's go and show you guys a quick combo tutorial, and then, as you know, with the replays. Let's go. Let's start with the combo tutorial. As you can see, we have an insane hand, but because we actually drew our branded fusion, what we're going to do is we're going to actually normal summon the Aluber to bait the Ash in case they have it, use its effect to search, and in this situation you can search either branded in red, get the branded lost, or get the branded opening. In my opinion, I think branded lost is the best play because they will not be able to respond into branded fusion. We're going to activate branded lost, and now that we are safe from resolving our branded fusion every single time, we're going to activate branded fusion. We're going to choose Lubellion as always. We're going to send 1 Despian Tragedy and 1 Fallen of Albas. Get the Lubellion into the field. We're going to, in this situation, we care about resolving our Lubellion as much as possible. We do not want him to get gammed. So what we're going to do is we're going to chainlink 1 Lubellion. Then we're going to discard Edgem Chain for cost. Then we're going to chainlink 2 Branded Lost, and then for the last effect, we're going to chainlink 3 the Despian Tragedy. In case they have Gamma, for example, we want to protect Lubellion as much as possible from resolving. The chain will resolve. We're going to add ad libitum of Despia into our hand. Branded Lost will search us. In this situation, you can add either Springer's Key to search for something else, but in my opinion, I think getting the Tri-Brigade Mercurier for the Omen Negate is much better, just to be safe. And then Lubellion will special summon us the Mirror Jade by sending the Fallen of Albas and himself back into the decks. Mirror Jade, the Aspect Dragon, is on the field. Now we're going to also resolve our Edgem Chain, in which we actually discarded with the effect of Lubellion to search the Frightful Patchwork. We're going to activate the Frightful Patchwork to search the polymerization in the other copy of Edgem Chain. And now, in this situation here, you have 2 options. You can either go for poly and use the ad libitum with the Fairy Tale Snow, for example, to go for Masquerade or Despian Coraretis, or you can keep this, set your branded in red, and then on your opponent's draw phase, and I will show you what I mean. Let's say your opponent had already an established board. Here, what you could do is, if you already used your banish effect with Mirror Jade, you could then go with branded red, use ad libitum and Mirror Jade, which you just used his banish effect, as I've said, in that scenario, and then you could go into Guardian Chimera, destroy 2 cards or 1 card from your opponent's field, and then draw 2 cards, and then with the effect of ad libitum, you will be able to recur your Mirror Jade again into the field, and quite literally just gain even more advantage with that extra banish effect. But let's just show you what it can happen. Because it's a bot, I know that it will set, in this situation, I will just show you what you can do. You can activate the Mirror Jade now. We're going to the graveyard, going to send the Albion in this situation. We're going to banish his card. Just think that it's any card, basically. And then we're going to instantly chain Branded Red. We're going to get the Tragedy from the graveyard. We're going to special summon, yes. We're going to get the Guardian Chimera using the Despian Tragedy, using the Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade from the field, and then also we're going to get the Ad Libitum, because you need to get the Ad Libitum to get your Mirror Jade back into the field. The Guardian Chimera will get into the field. We're going to Chainlink 1 Chimera. We're going to Chainlink 2 Tragedy. Chainlink 3 for Ad Libitum, in case they have Gamma. And then, obviously, we're going to target Mirror Jade. And then Chainlink 4, for the Blinded Lost. Chainlink 4 from Blinded Lost because we don't really care about the extra the extra addition that you could add into our hand. It's not really as relevant. You could get either the Ecclesia, the Springer's Kit for the extra search. It's quite irrelevant at this point, honestly. We have so much advantage. And now, because Mirror Jade is back into the field, we're going to add a Luber, of course, for follow-up for our next turn, again. And you will be able to see now, we're going to draw 2 for the Chimera, destroy his back row, whatever else he might have. And as you can see now, I have the Mirror Jade banish effect again. If you read this, it says you can only control 1 Mirror Jade, we know that, and once per turn, you can banish one monster to the field, and it cannot use this effect next turn. But as you saw with this combo that I just showed you guys, you can quite literally bypass this. You will lose the end phase distraction for the entire board of your opponent, but by doing that, you basically trade that with getting another banish of your opponent's monster field, which is, in my opinion, worth it. Now that we are done with the combo tutorial, which is, I think it is quite useful, quite easy for you guys to see that this deck can actually get so much advantage by using the right cards at the right time or bait the hand traps so you can resolve the most powerful effects that you have in your hand at any time, basically. Now that we are done with the combo tutorial, let's go and start and show you guys the replays. For the first replay, we're playing second against Branded Tri-Brigade. You heard that right. He's going to activate his Fractal, send to the graveyard to basically send Nerval. Nerval will activate to add him Kit. He will send Keras to discard the Kit to special summon him, activate the Kit to send the Mercurier, and then activate Keras to banish the 4 to go into his Shureg, activate his Mercurier because he was banished to get the Albas to the hand, use these 2 to go into Ferrigit, activate his Shureg effect to get the Fractal into the hand for him to basically have follow-up for the next turn, activate Fractal, special summon the activate Ferrigit, to special summon the Fractal, and then Fractal again banish 2 to special summon the Birbram. Then he activated Albion from hand and he sent the Branded Sword, and then he activated Branded Sword to banish it to recure his Mercurier to get it back into his hand. The chain will resolve. He got some Mercurier back into his hand, and then Albion will resolve. He will be sent back to the deck and draw 1. He will use the 2 monsters, Fractal and Ferrigit, to go into Predamon Vert Anaconda. Ferrigit will draw him 1, and then he will send 1 card from the hand to the graveyard. And then with Predamon Vert Anaconda, as you can see, he's actually going to use Branded Fusion. I thought he was going for Fusion Destiny, but I was wrong, obviously. He's going to use Albas and the Birbram, to go into the Mirror Jade. Activate the Birbram from the graveyard to search the Revolt. Send 1 card back into the deck. Set the Revolt, and he's going to pass. We're going to draw into the second Aluber, which is quite bad, honestly. We're going to normal summon Aluber for search. He will allow us. He will actually let this resolve. We're going to activate Branded Lost. He will chain Revolt because he wants to go into his Shureg to banish it, unfortunately. Chain will resolve. She will get the 4 monsters into the field and immediately use them to go into his Shureg. His effect will activate to basically, and also activate the Nerval as well for chaining 2, Ferrigit chaining 3. Chains will resolve, add the Keras. He banishes the Lost, and then we're going to activate the Theater, activate the Lure of Darkness to banish the 1 Aluber, activate Fractal Package to get the Preparation and the Edge and Chain into our hand. Now, what we're going to do, activate the Theater, use this 3 to go into our Guardian Chimera. Chainlink 1 Guardian Chimera, Chainlink 2 Edge and Chain. As I've said, we want to protect Chimera from resolving. Chainlink 3 from damage of Despia, He will chain his Mirror Jade. he's sending his Brigand for chain link 4 to banish our Guardian Chimera. The Chimera will be banished, but then Dramaturge of Despia will be special summoned. Edgem Chain will add as the Frightful Patchwork, and then Chimera will destroy 1, draw us 2. Shurek will resolve into the graveyard to add him the kit. We're going to special summon the Ecclesia, activate her effect to special summon the Albas, send the polymerization that we have from hand to activate his Super Poly effect. He will chain Mercurier to negate, and then we're going to just Cold by the Grave the Mercurier, because we want to resolve the Fallen of Albas effect. Chain will resolve. Let's speed this up a bit. And then I'm going to use his Mirror Jade and my Albas to go into the Titanic Lad. We went to Titanic Lad because she will get buffed, and we want him to be as big as possible because we can actually OTK our opponent. Then, as you can see, he will go to 3700 attack. His Mirror Jade will activate. That basically means that on the end phase he will destroy my board, but that is irrelevant because I have lethal. His Mercurier will not resolve because it got Cold by the Graved, and then his Mirror Jade will just resolve basically, activate Branded Fusion, and then he just ashes my Branded Fusion. But as I've said, that is irrelevant because we have lethal on board. Chain will resolve, and then I'm going to go battle phase, destroy his Verte, and then attack him directly and basically kill him from there. That was it for the first replay. Let's go ahead and show you guys the second replay. For the second replay, we're playing first against Live Twins. We have a decent hand. We will start with Branded Fusion. He's going to ash us. We're going to instantly chain Cold by the Grave. For chain link 3, the chain will resolve. We're going to send Tragedy and Albas to get the Lubellion. Tragedy, chain link 1, Lubellion, chain link 2. Send the Ash Blossom for cost. He's going to effect Veilaras to negate the Lubellion. Unfortunately for us, chain will resolve. We'll get the Eluber into our hand. Normal summon him to search for the Branded in red. We're going to set this and pass. Now you will see how powerful Branded in red actually is. He's going to normal summon his Lila, special summon the Kiskill Frost, go into his Evil Twin Kisakill. I'm going to instantly Branded in red chain. He's going to chain to his effect to special summon. The chain will resolve. He will special summon the Lila from the graveyard. Branded red will resolve, get the Tragedy back into our hand, and use this 3 to go into Guardian Chimera. This boss monster is quite phenomenal. Chain will resolve, chain link 1 for Chimera, chain link 2 for Tragedy. The chain will resolve. Unfortunately for our opponent, we will search Eluber for follow-up, and then Chimera will destroy the 2 monsters on the field and draw 1. He will activate his secret password to search his Live Twin home. He will activate Live Twin Sunny Snitch to add 1 Kisakill into his hand. He will activate his Twin home to discard the card to special summon Manlila from the deck into the field, and he just scoops because he didn't have any follow-up. He was basically dead. Let's go and show you guys the third replay. The third replay, we're playing second against Dinomorphia. He's going to set 3, activate his Card of Demise, draw 2, normal summon the Theresia, set the Brute, and then pass. We're going to draw Edgem Chain. We're going to activate Fool's Burial first, send the Tragedy. We're going to activate the Tragedy effect to search for the Eluber. We're going to normal summon the Eluber. He's going to chain Solemn Judgment on summon. Unfortunately for us, we're going to special summon the Ecclesia, activate her effect to special summon the Albas, activate the Albas effect to send Edgem Chain, and then he's going to chain Dinomorphia Brute to destroy his card and my card as well. Both our monsters are going to be dead, and Fallen of Albas will not be able to resolve. Edgem Chain will resolve though. That's what I thought, that he was chain Grave Trigger Strap Hole to negate my Edgem Chain as well. Fucking hell. I'm just going to set Super Poly and pass. On the end phase, he's going to activate Trap Trick to send the Dinomorphia Domain to set the 3rd copy from his deck. And then on draw phase, he's going to activate his domain, pay half his life points, send Theresia and Diplos to go into his Katarina. And then he will use her effect to send another domain, or banish it, sorry, to send Theresia and Diplos to basically duplicate the effect to get another Katarina into the field. I'm going to chain Super Poly, sending the Edgem Chain, and use his 2 monsters to go into Predablant, Dragostopelia. Now that we have the Omnigate, we're also going to get the search with the Frightful Patchwork into our turn, and basically our opponent is going to set another one and pass. What we're going to do here is immediately use Frightful Patchwork to add the poly and the edging chain, and then we're going to use poly to go into Mirror Jade. And if you noticed, our opponent has 500 HP left, but with the Masquerade, not the Mirror Jade, sorry, with the Masquerade, her effect is, in order for our opponent to use a card, he needs to pay 600 life points, and since the life points that he has are lower than the cost that he needs to pay, he can't activate any cards, so he's basically dead at this point. That's why he just scoops, unfortunately for him. So that was it for the third replay. Let's go and show you guys the fourth and final replay. For our fourth and final replay for this deck profile, we're going second against Adventure branded Despia. Holy fucking shit. And our hand is not the best. We still have branded Fusion. We cannot really complain. He banished his Water Enchantress, got the Right of Armazir, activated the Right of Armazir to get a token the Fateful Adventure, special summon the Griffon because she searched it, got a Dracobug. You get the gist. She will go into his Adventure combo. And then he will just end there, which was quite surprising. He has 4 cards in hand. We're going to draw Cold by the Grave. We're going to start with Branded Opening. He's going to chain Maxi. We're going to obviously chain with Cold by the Grave. He will chain his Griffon to negate. Chain will resolve. We're going to send the other Branded Opening to get a Luber into the hand. Normal summon a Luber. Get the Branded Lost into our hand. Activate this. We're going to go into Branded Fusion. Send the Albas into Tragedy to go into Lubellion. Then we're going to Lubellion, I think Lubellion Chainlink 1 as always, as I've said. And Chainlink 2 for Branded Lost. Also Tragedy for Chainlink 3. The chain will resolve. Tragedy will add us Ad Libitum. Then Lost will add us Tri-Brigade Mercurial for the negate. And then we're going to use the Lubellion and the Albas to go into Mirror Jade. And then activate Mirror Jade to banish his token, send the Albion. We're going to attack him for some damage. We're going to set the Branded Red, and in the end phase, activate the Albion to get the Branded Fusion into our hand for follow-up. And then our opponent will draw for his turn. And main phase will activate the Fateful Adventure to get the Griffon. He will send the Despian Tragedy to the graveyard. He will add his Ad Libitum to the hand. Activate Harpy Feather. He basically forces us to use the Branded Red now, unfortunately. Get a Tragedy from the graveyard into the hand. And use the Mirror Jade and the Ad Libitum to go into Masquerade. And then Chainlink 1 Ad Libitum of Despia, targeting Mirror Jade. Get Mirror Jade back into the field. And now our opponent has to pay 600 life points for every single card that he activates. He will banish his Water Enchantress to add the Right of Armazir to get the token. He will activate the Right of Armazir. As you can see, he's getting burned every single time. Then he's going to chain Griffon Rider, and I'm going to immediately chain Mirror Jade again to banish his token, sending another Albion into the graveyard. And then his Griffon Rider will be special summoned to the field, and then he will just scoop, because I had that much of a bigger advantage over him. So that was it for the deck profile. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. This deck is, in my opinion, one of the best and one of my favorites actually right now. It is so powerful, and if you know how to play and use your cards correctly, you can almost always break every single board for every single meta deck that there is currently in Master Duel. Either way, thank you guys very much for watching. Again, if you enjoy videos like this, content like this, tech profiles, guides, combo tutorials, etc., I would really appreciate your like and your subscribe, but you get the gist, you get the idea. Either way, thank you very much for watching. Take care guys, and I'll see you on the next one.